Hi there, I'm Don.
And hi, I'm Cindy. Welcome to Pearls of Liberty for May 17th, 2014. We've been noticing articles about declining supplies of food, beef, so on and so forth, and we wanted to talk a little bit about that today. And we're beginning with this article from RT. What's the beef? USDA goes shopping for submachine guns. This is pretty wild. What does the USDA need machine guns for?
Hmm. Well, if maybe they don't have enough BLM people and they need the USDA people to help keep the Americans off the land.
Or maybe, maybe they anticipate that, who knows? I wonder if they might anticipate that food shortages would get so bad that people would start to storm their facilities or
That could be.
something.
Yeah.
All these government agencies are hoarding weapons and ammunition. National Weather Service, Social Security Administration, and U.S. Department of Agriculture.
One can hope that some of these weapons get intercepted by the good guys, or that a lot of the USDA guys actually are good guys, and these plans get thwarted. I remember reading that from Jim Garrow about how the ammunition actually, a lot of it didn't end up where they wanted it to.
That's a good thought. And I actually at an art show once I saw a plaque by a painting that told a story of how some of Napoleon's men kept their weapons after Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo, and they used them to participate in a kind of a revolution. Yeah, sometimes these weapons can have uses that the people who are ordering them don't necessarily foresee. But there definitely is a lot stirred up right now in just the food processing. You know, all the controversies about GMOs and the Bureau of Land Management trying to move cattle ranchers off their land. And we're having an unfortunate result. Maybe it's a planned result. The meat crisis is here. Price of shrimp up 61%. 7 million pigs dead. Beef at all-time high. And of course, this map of California shows the drought conditions. So that is certainly a part of the issue here. But there are a lot of other aspects to this.
I would not be surprised if the controlling elite were purposely creating scarcity so that they would be able to justify their eugenics operations and propaganda to lead us to believe that we have too many people and we need to let them manage everything and curtail our individual liberties, etc. So, some of these things like the pigs dying might be due to GMO feeds and all of the digestive disorders that happen from animals eating GMO, and that would be a somewhat natural occurrence. But a lot of this stuff is happening because the environment has been purposely poisoned, not because God didn't create enough food for us on the earth. We do live, like I'd like to say, on a planet of abundance, but the enemy has to convince us that there's scarcity in order to be able to control us, and that's his goal. And that's probably number one agenda of the dark side, is to convince you that there's lack so that you'll have to buy into their management schemes.
Well, an interesting aspect of that is, in fact, the California drought. Anybody who knows anything about geoengineering and the abilities to control weather can realize that if people who had control of such things had wanted to, they could have prevented or brought an end to this drought anytime they wanted to.
Well, yeah, if you just drive down Highway 5 or 99 in California, you'll see all these signs about the fake water shortage that's caused by Congress and Pelosi and Boxer and Feinstein. They're all named on these signs. These farmers know what's going on, and they're trying to help awaken people. This is a deliberate shortage, and they use excuses like the smelt fish in the delta that needs to be protected, or cute little mice, or whatever it is they want to use to convince you that they have to help manage. They have to manage this so that the cute little animals don't die.
Well, interestingly enough, this is New Mexico, but in California, the film Chinatown with Faye Dunaway and Jack Nicholson, the theme of that film, the plot actually has to do with people being murdered in an effort to cover up the fact that water was actually just being dumped into the ocean so that they could justify more controls. Just what you're saying, basically.
Right.
So this is not a new idea. This has been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, that's why I say it's number one strategy on the enemy's agenda. He would not be able to charge interest on money if people believed that there was abundance. We would have abundant money. We wouldn't have these economic cycles of scarcity and depressions if the enemy wasn't able to convince us that there was lack and we had to scrimp and do without. Because they manage everything, of course, they do create very real scarcities. But once you see that there really is abundance and can get past their scams, then they can't be in control. And I think humanity is waking up to that.
And certainly one example of that is what you already mentioned. From InfoWars, to protect a mouse, Forest Service cuts off water access in New Mexico. And they're in Otero County, New Mexico. The Federal Forest Service has fenced off a 23-acre section of land, preventing a rancher's cattle from getting to a watering hole located on the tract. So again, this is, as you were saying, this is another way that they create artificial scarcity. So what's going to happen to these cattle on this ranch? Are they going to be allowed to just die of thirst?
Sure.
So yeah, this is another reason why we have a food shortage, because resources have been badly managed, and pressure has been brought to bear on cattle ranchers. And one of the objections, and we've kind of been dancing around the issue, all of this is really related to Agenda 21. And one of the ideas behind Agenda 21 is, ostensibly at least, lowering emissions of greenhouse gases. And methane, which is produced by cattle, is one of what's considered a greenhouse gas.
Yeah, number one, this whole idea of CO2 being harmful is just purely bogus. There have been times in history when the CO2 level has been much higher than it is, and guess what? CO2 is the food for plants. Just like we breathe oxygen, plants breathe CO2. So you could get some more lush forests growing if the CO2 were really that high, but you know what? Historically, it's not even really that high. There's a lot of times in the fossil record that scientists can determine that the CO2 level has been much higher. So this is all bogus stuff, and they're just using methane as, oh, this is a horrible, harmful gas, and cows produce methane, and gosh, we've got to have less cows. Now, I personally think that there's a high probability that the elites want us to be vegans or vegetarians and not to eat meat, because eating meat does make people more aggressive, and these controllers do not want an aggressive population fighting back against their schemes. So I think this is all excuses and pseudoscience, and anybody that knows real science can see through it really easily. But there are a lot of people that have been dumbed down. That's part of the process, and that enables these guys to pull off their schemes is this dumbing down.
Alex Jones had a guest this week who mentioned sunspots and how sunspots affect cycles of, even human behavior, but also of weather.
Sure. Yeah, that's very well known.
Who was it?
So people shouldn't expect things to be uniform. There's this, because we live in an artificial environment, a lot of us, where we're insulated from nature. We spend a lot of time indoors, and a lot of our view of reality isn't reality, it's through the television. So we have this artificial idea that any disruptive event must be something breaking down, when in fact it's normal. There's these natural cycles and events that have always happened, and probably things like hurricanes have begun increasing more, not so much because anything's changed in the environment, but just because we had been in a previously more stable, uniform, docile climate. Things are shaking up a little bit now. Probably not that much of it has to do anything with man. I really think it's egocentric to think that mankind is causing all this stuff on the earth. The impact of toxic gases in the environment is probably a lot less than the influence of the sun. And this, because, like you said, the sunspots are a major factor, well known. You can follow the cycles of sunspots and their impact on the environment and human behavior. You can see that the sun is a major driver of these cycles, much more so than man.
Well, you mentioned that these gases aren't that much of a problem, but big energy definitely contributes to some pollution that is a problem, like the Gulf oil spill, and this is, from Natural News, is probably due to Fukushima.
Yeah, there are serious environmental problems, and those are the ones that aren't getting attention. This is somewhat mysterious, the marine mammals mysteriously dying in record numbers along the West Coast, but there's a pretty good guess that it has to do with Fukushima radiation, which is now hitting the West Coast through the water system as well as the air. So there are serious problems that need to be addressed that do have to do with the man-made activity, but the elite controlling class is not telling you that Fukushima is the cause. There is actually technology that can reverse this, but they don't want it because the powers that be have a vested interest in creating these crises and covering up their solutions so that they can convince you to give them more control. Just like continuing to fight for a cure for cancer when the cure for cancer has already been found. And it has to do with the food supply and all of the petrochemicals and the lifestyles that we're living now, and the toxic environment. So this is all known stuff, and we have scam artists that are covering things over so that they can perpetuate their control. And of course, at the top of their control scheme is the father of lies himself.
This is actually considered a food issue as well. So this is another aspect of scarcity, and I completely agree with you that we want to find a human to blame, but it never makes sense that any human would have this degree of malice toward the earth and the people and the creatures who dwell on the earth. It really only makes sense in terms of it being Satan, the devil, fallen Lucifer, whatever you want to call him. And yeah, there has been a long-term alignment with the people who have made these plans between them and Lucifer. And it's it would be great if they could come to repentance and come to join with the rest of the people on the earth, because everybody's going to share the same consequences, and certainly everybody will face eternal judgment someday.
Yeah, I think the thing that occurs to me is that even in Scripture, even some of the good kings in the Old Testament did not fully expose evil because they were afraid of what the consequences were to them. They didn't want to create chaos. They didn't want to upset the people. And I think it was even Hezekiah that showed the enemy his storehouses and was rebuked by the prophet because he acted very unwisely. So it really is a very long-term problem not cooperating with the enemy. The humans are just too accommodating, and a lot of times very seriously underestimate the negative forces, the evil that we're up against, and so we're taken in by it. We're easily led astray.
We have a couple articles about alleged climate change. This is from the New American. Pentagon spending tax money preparing for climate change. The phrase fighting climate change has taken on new meaning with the Department of Defense, factoring consensus-based forecasts of a warmer planet into its military preparedness models. People are really invested in this idea, heavily invested in the belief that there is man-made global warming, climate change, whatever you want to call it. This is an InfoWars article, Global Warming Research Suppressed Due to Intolerance of Skepticism, claims scientists.
Yeah, the global warming, climate change, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's obvious to me that people think that there's good science supporting it, but there really isn't, and you just get into all kinds of smear campaigns saying that anybody that opposes the idea of anthropogenic global warming or anthropogenic climate change is paid for by big oil. It just isn't true. Just look at the science. It really is very well documented that this whole climate change, global warming thing is a fraud. There's a great book by a local talk radio guy, local to the Bay Area, Brian Sussman, who is a meteorologist, a scientist, and he did his own research, came up with a great book totally exposing the scam. Where is the news about that in the media? It just doesn't exist. So this faction of the New World Order that seems to be gaining prominence is the faction that is behind promoting the idea of climate change and the need to give them control so that they can solve the climate change. And that's why the chemtrails are not going away, because that's all part of their scheme to shield the world. But in reality, we're going to end up with air that's so badly messed up that they're going to have to put bubbles over the cities. And this is all planned. They create one problem so that they can offer their solution. Control the cities, the only place where people can live, and first they have to pollute the skies everywhere else. And that's the direction this thing is headed unless we wake up and stop them.
Let's wake up and stop them.
Okay.
You want to?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for tuning in for this week's Pearls of Liberty. We hope that you're having a great weekend.
And as always, we remind you to see the world the way that it really is. See yourself in it. Walk your walk. You are the one you've been waiting for.